like, if I were to describe it even more so in more detail, it's kind of like a combination of The Thing from John Carpenter's The Thing, a Stepford wife, like her speech pattern. She acts like it's like this creature is trying to figure out what is a mother supposed to act like, and so it kind of acts like a Stepford wife. It kind of has this like proper way of speaking, but then says these like really disturbing things of just this kind of like, isn't this great? But now, my friends, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna move on to the next part of my show, and that is Comic Book Corner. And Comic Book Corner is a show that I typically do every other Thursday, along with Musical Musings. And it's where I review a comic book, a graphic novel, a manga. I break down the story, the characters, the artwork, what I like about it, what I dislike about it. And I've been really happy with this series, actually, because it's been exposing me to, not only, certainly re-exposing me to characters and comics and graphic novels that I've read throughout my lifetime, but also like new stuff. And today that is very much the case, because I am going to be reviewing Young Avengers Volume 1, Style Over Substance, which is a iteration of the Young Avengers team, which is, I guess, been around at this point for nearly 20 years. And the person I have to thank for this particular book that I'm reviewing today is Edgy Berserker. Edgy Berserker, thank you so much for suggesting this book, and thank you so much for being a patron on my Patreon, and for everyone else for your suggestions as well, and also for all of your votes. I really, really appreciate it. Through your support, I'm able to do a show like this every Thursday, whether it be Comic Book Corner or Musical Musings. Now, for people who have really no idea about the Young Avengers, who only have like a little bit of experience with the concept and the team, kind of give you a brief background for this particular book and story. Though the original Young Avengers have disbanded due to an assortment of issues and tragedies in their respective lives, a new team of former members and new heroes are forced to unite after the mystical mutant Wiccan accidentally unleashes a threat that forces the young heroes to escape and battle a strange parasitic entity with a very cruel ability. Now, of course, before jumping into the story itself and talking about the characters and the artwork, I definitely want to talk about my experiences, with the Young Avengers, and how I was introduced to many of these younger heroes back in the day. I became aware of the team in the mid 2000s. I think that's when they originally came out. They had their own ongoing comic at the same time, and they were comprised of several members like Patriot, Stature, Kate Bishop, Wiccan, Hulkling, and several others. I recall actually owning the first issue and getting it, I think, like on Free Comic Book Day or something, like back in 2005 or 2006. And around that time, I remember the team and several of its members like popping up during the Civil War event. And I'm pretty sure that's when I kind of like stopped reading anything that featured them. Because there's actually a lot of Marvel comics during that time period, chat. I was an avid comic book reader, like from the, I guess late 90s all the way up to like the mid 2000s, certainly like collecting single issues and volumes and collected issues and omnibuses and all that kind of stuff. And more eventually gravitating more towards like outside of like the big two of Marvel and DC, and reading a lot of like Image books and Boom and those types of companies, indie published stuff, right? Because I wanted something different. And one, I was just kind of sick. That was the thing. I was just sick of all these tie-in events, whether it was Marvel or DC, just kind of taking over all these comics and all these, like, literally hijacking the stories that these writers were working on. It's like, well, I had this whole thing planned. It's like, well, too bad. You got to incorporate stuff from Civil War or this event or that event. And I was like, all right, it's just, this is not my thing. And again, the reason why I stopped reading, or at least Young Avengers, or at least stopped following the exploits of the team, was, again, not because I didn't like the members or even their interaction, nothing to do with that, but because I just felt like these books were being hijacked by the powers that be, by these editors that demanded like all these other books like crossover with each other. and events like Civil War and Secret Invasion and Dark Reign. I mean, you name any event, chat. And like, not to say that there aren't good events in comics, there absolutely are, but it feels like so many of these just take over and they move away from the ideas that the writers originally had, and it could potentially like mess up a lot of their storytelling and their character dynamics. And I've always thought that's really frustrating. That is definitely a negative aspect of comics. However, I've always been aware of the Young Avengers, of the team and its various members since then. And I've always liked the idea personally of a young team of heroes trying to just kind of strike out on their own. It's very similar to something like DC's Teen Titans, right? Which I'm much more familiar with. I feel like a lot of people are probably more familiar with Teen Titans than they are the Young Avengers. Where in the Teen Titans, where many of the sons, the daughters, the sidekicks of notable heroes and villains, and sometimes not notable heroes and villains, kind of come together, to save the world in their own way and on their own terms. I've always been kind of surprised that Marvel hasn't really leaned into the appeal of the Young Avengers more, since I guess DC has had, has had great, fantastic success with the Teen Titans, in comics and certainly in anime adaptations. And I think it helps that, the Teen Titans came before and they were established, decades before the concept of a Young Avengers team, right? And, you had fantastic storylines. And that's when the Teen Titans weren't actually like being forced to cross over into like events. And so you were able to establish the dynamic between characters like Robin, Dick Grayson, and Cyborg, and Beast Boy, and Starfire, and Raven, and Kid Flash, and, whoever else was on the team at the time. Tara, of course, right? And I think that's what they built up. This pantheon of characters, supporting characters. They had all these stories. And then so when they thought like, hey, we can probably adapt some of this stuff. And, they had great success with, I think a lot of people, especially my generation's millennials, they grew up watching the Teen Titans, cartoon, which ran in the early 2000s to the mid 2000s, was canceled before its time, sadly, chat. And, and they did movies, and there's been other and I guess even more recently, they've done I guess partially based on a lot of the new 52 material, but they've created like a lot of those, straight to, VOD, Teen Titan movies, like Teen Titans versus the Justice League, or, whatever Teen Titan stories, like the Judas Contract, right? They've adapted that. Whether it's good or not, it just shows you DC, they really lean into all that content and that stuff. And funny enough, even though it is mixed, in terms of its reception, you have people that like and some people that outright despise it. I don't know. There are little shorts of it that I kind of enjoy. But, the Teen Titans Go, which I guess in a way is the spiritual successor, the spiritual sequel to the original Teen Titans. I mean, it brings in those original voice actors for those characters, takes some of those designs too, but it's very much for kids. Right. And I know that, people are upset at that show for a variety of reasons, at least what I saw of it. I love the movie, that first movie that they did. I thought it was fantastic. The Teen Titans, I think it's called Teen Titans Go, the movies. Really funny. And I guess they did a sequel, which wasn't released to theaters, but I don't know if it was as good. But I know that the original movie was I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was fantastic. So I wasn't bothered by that at all. But again, it kind of shows you the differences between, I guess, the teen teams, if you will, the young heroes, where I thought DC, for the most part, has treated those characters really well, and they were able to build up decades of material. And I guess you look at something like the Young Avengers, which again has not been around as long. Certainly not. I mean, the Teen Titans probably has, nearly 30 years on the Young Avengers. But Marvel hasn't really leaned into that. I mean, they're trying to, I guess, with the live action adaptation. But even it was brought up earlier before we really got to this part of the show today, that might not even happen based on a variety of issues that's kind of going on with the MCU, even though they've kind of laid the groundwork, or at least established that, yes, we have Miss Marvel, and we have Kate Bishop, and we have Patriot, we have Kid Loki, we have American Chavez. That's a lot of the members of the team. And we have Speed, we have Wiccan. But, everything that's going on right now at the MCU, I think they're trying to just figure out what they need to do and eliminate. So I might not even get that. But we'll see. But in any case, I have been exposed to the Young Avengers and the variety of other characters, but not nearly as much as like other teen teams and other like teen characters from other notable comic book publishers. Now, when it comes to this specific book, Young Avengers Volume 1, Style Over Substance, which is written by Kieron Gillen and drawn by Jamie McKelvie. I do appreciate that they almost have like a Brian Michael Bendis approach in building this new team of Young Avengers. And probably when I say that to you, that might turn some people on or turn some people off for a variety of reasons. But stick with me here. The book feels very much like the New Avengers to me, which, I collected several volumes of, and it featured a combination of veteran Avengers, Captain America, Iron Man, but also new heroes who had never really been Avengers before, like Luke Cage and Spider-Man and Wolverine. I was like, oh, okay. So it's like, all right, we're taking some core members of the team that have always been there, but also some members that I was like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if this person joins? And then they do join, right? And yes, they do make references to some past events that the team was like formerly involved in. But like what Brian Michael Bendis did with those characters, he's like, yeah, we're going to reference some stuff and some other plot lines like Avengers Disassembled and like what happened to the previous team. But we're just going to be solely focused on this new team. And it's just going to be so much on the interactions between these characters. Like the wonderful conversations between like Peter Parker and Tony Stark, or like the really interesting connection that like Captain America and Luke Cage have, and they see each other's perspectives. It's like, wow, that's like some like really fun stuff like in those original books. And again, it's very much the case here with Young Avengers Volume 1, Style of a Substance. Like Gillen's focus is, he does somewhat comment on some of the events of the past, but it's never like, but that's not, it's like, he's like, we're going to comment on that, but we're going to keep moving forward, because his focus is so much on the dynamic and the relationships between the characters, having them either reunite in a really organic way, and having characters they never interacted with before kind of cross paths and like establish, friendships. And also at the same time, introducing like a really cool threat that I was not even aware of in Marvel Comics, but I really, really like it. Like in Volume 1, the team is comprised of former Young Avengers members like Wiccan, Hulkling, and Kate Bishop, who prefers to be called Hawkeye. It's like, stop calling me Kate Bishop, it's Hawkeye. But like everyone gets confused with that, which is funny. But it also introduces new members like American Chavez, a character named Novar, who is a Kree, kind of like this young Kree man, teenage boy, who everyone calls him Marvel Boy. And he's like, my name is not Marvel Boy, it's Novar, thank you very much. And he's kind of like out on his own. He doesn't really know what to do with himself. And Kid Loki. I think like the heart of the book is really focused on Wiccan and Hulkling. They're very much the heart of the story. Of course, Wiccan, he is one of the sons of the Scarlet Witch, and he inherited her magical abilities. It's always been kind of confusing. Like, okay, the Scarlet Witch is a mutant, but she has hex powers, but she's also has magic, and it's like, whatever. He inherited her abilities of magic, right? Although he's no longer with his mother. It's actually an interesting situation. Like when we first see them in the story, both Wiccan and Hulkling are they're boyfriends. They're lovers. They're dating. Hulkling is currently living with Wiccan and his adoptive parents, since Scarlet Witch gave him up because she's like, I got a lot of issues going on. All right, if you read Marvel Comics during that time period, Chad, during the 2000s, the mid 2000s, Scarlet Witch she was having a rough time. And so she's like, you know what? I love my children, but I am just not in a healthy place where I can raise them in a healthy environment. And so she's like, I need to give them up for adoption, which I imagine she does so before the events of the series. And Wiccan is adopted by this family who is actually very nurturing and very caring. And I really like that. It wasn't like, don't use your powers, or, they're not like, I thought, like, are these going to be like abusive parents, whether like psychologically, emotionally, or physically abusive? Like, no, they really support their son. And I thought, oh, that's really nice. This kind of healthy family where it's like you're not a blood relative, but hey, you are, son. It doesn't care. We don't care where you come from because we love you. It's like, man, that's really sweet. You know, this comic has a lot of those types of moments. But in any case, like Wiccan, he's living with his adopted family. But his boyfriend, Hulkling, is also living with him as well. Like his adopted family, it was like, yes, he can live here too because he has nowhere to go. Like Hulkling, which is really interesting. Like I'm always kind of like, oh, Hulkling, yeah. I think a lot of people think of Hulkling like Hulkling is the son of the Hulk, and he's not. He's actually not. Hulkling is the son of a Kree man. And I think sometimes it's been implied that it's Captain Marvel, the original Captain Marvel. Although, again, timelines are always changing, who even knows. But in any case, he's the son of a Kree and a Skrull, specifically a Skrull princess. And his father, who I'm pretty sure is the original Captain Marvel, is obviously dead. And his mother was also killed, so he's an orphan. So he kind of has nowhere to go. He is also despised by both the Kree and the Skrulls, since the Kree and the Skrulls hate each other for a variety of reasons. And so he's like, well, I just kind of live on Earth, and I'm trying to be the best hero that I can be, at the same time. But because he doesn't really know where to live, he lives with Wiccan. He has a romantic relationship, with him, which the parents also, I was like, are these going to be like some gay hating parents? And like, they're not. They're like, we were happy to have you live here. So great to have you under Ruth, and you two love each other, and that's great. Like, these are some very understanding, very kind, very progressive thinking parents. And I don't know, in comic books and just novels in general, it was like, that was kind of like refreshing to read, And Wiccan, I'll tell you right now, Wiccan and Hulkling, they're adorable in this book. They're so cute together, chat. You just love them because they've been through some shit together. Obviously, all the way back in the day in like those original Young Avengers books, which they kind of talk about, but again, it's not the forefront. But you get the sense that, hey, these are two guys that care about each other. They're very sensitive to each other's feelings, and they're trying to be, better, for each other at the same time, despite, whatever difficult circumstances they might be under, which could involve supervillains or a cataclysmic event. Like they have each other's backs, and at the same time are really appreciative of their adopted family, which I'm like, this is nice. This is super wholesome and nice. And that's kind of the heart of the story. Hulkling, because he still wants to be a superhero, he still wants to go out there. But again, like in this point in the Marvel Universe, the Kree and the Skrulls are just despised. They're not trusted, and I kind of understand as to why. The Kree and the Skrulls have attempted to conquer Earth many, many times throughout Marvel's history and in many various books and arcs and stuff. And so it's kind of funny how they introduce him, like Hulkling specifically. He's Spider-Man. He's pretending to be Spider-Man, and he's like swinging around and stuff, and he interrupts some criminals, but he doesn't have like Spider-Man's all of his abilities though, and so he's kind of struggling with that. Like at one point he gets shot and everyone's like, I fucking killed Spider-Man. He's like, no, you didn't. And then he uses his Skrull abilities and everyone's just like, oh man, you're not Spider-Man. He's like, yeah, I'm not. And he's like, are you a Skrull? And he goes like, he's like, hey man, I love it. Like he saves like these people. And they're like, listen, you got to be careful though. Like, we know you're one of those good Skrulls, right? You're one of the good ones. Just keep that on the down low. He's okay. I wonder if like Peter was like watching this. Like, that's not fucking me. But it's kind of cool that in the beginning of the book, he's literally pretending to be Spider-Man since like New Yorkers like love him. And I was like, oh, okay. So I can see why he wants to be a hero that's like really well loved by the people, So I think that's really sweet. But he's doesn't know what his place is in this world, since he's the son of two species that hate each other, and he's living on a planet that hates both the Kree and the Skrulls, and he's lost his parents. And so Wiccan's like, well, I'm just gonna use my magic, and I'm just gonna find another version of your mom in the multiverse. And I'm sure that won't have any negative consequences whatsoever. And of course it does. And that sets up a really cool conflict in this book. But it's like, man, just like his mother before him, chat, going throughout the multiverse, trying to find, whether it be her, her children or whoever else, messing with it and just ruining everyone's lives. Like Wiccan, just don't do what your mother would do. And I'm sure at this point, Scarlet Witch would say the exact same thing. Don't be me. Don't do what I did. But I thought was funny. But that initially sets up the conflict. But you get a great sense of like, who these two characters are and the relationship, and despite what Wiccan does, it's pretty healthy for the most part. And then we move on to, speaking of like another relationship, we move on to Kate Bishop and Novar, and how we're introduced to them is quite funny. Like Kate Bishop, she's still trying to find herself, also dealing with like how her mother who had passed away. You know, she's trying to move away from like the shadow of like Hawkeye, of Clint Barton, trying to find herself, right? And she just has a sexy one-night stand with an alien. Chat, we've all been there. We've all been there. And that particular alien happens to be Novar or Marvel Boy, but he insists, like, please do not call me Marvel Boy. Please call me Novar. And she's like, whatever, dude. And like their initial introduction is it's very funny. It's like, you know, people have been on one night stands before. Like she wakes up, she's like, oh, the guy's in the shower. What was his name again? I don't know. Should I stay here? Should I go? I don't know she doesn't know what the protocol is. And so she's like, I don't even know where I am. And she opens up the window and she realizes, oh, I'm in space. I'm on a spaceship. No wonder the flight, no wonder the drive took so long. And he's like, oh, you're up. And they have like this kind of really cute interaction. And, you know, he's still trying to, because he's also like a refugee from Kree, but at the same time, apparently, like he did something to the Skrulls to piss off the Skrulls. And the Skrulls are like constantly after his ass. There's like a bounty on his head or something. But he's like getting into Earth culture for the first time. And he's like really into music. And so he's like, I really love your 60s music. It's fantastic. And he starts playing, like, he puts a vinyl on an album. He starts fucking dancing. He's like, yeah. And Kate Bishop's just like laughing at him. And he's like, what? This is the dancing of your people. And she's like, yeah, from the 1960s, dude. Like very, very funny, right? And then, of course, they're attacked by Skrulls, and they have to, you know, survive and you know, go to Earth, right? But really funny introduction to them like that. And then we're introduced to American Chavez, who, you know, again, who's people might be more familiar with her now because of the Doctor Strange movie in the Multiverse of Madness, which I personally felt she was really underwritten. Not the actress's fault. I just feel like they didn't know what to do with that character outside of her power. She was like a plot device. Here we get like a better sense of who she is as a person. Like this American Chavez, like they don't actually display her like multiverse ability, at least not yet, at least not in volume 1. It could be different. It could potentially be different in like the sequel volumes, for all I know. But in this volume, she's kind of actually like Wonder Woman in a way. Like she has flight, and she has super strength, and she has durability. I was like, okay, so this was like just a new take on the character, possibly even the original take on the character. I'm not sure, to be honest. But in here, she's, again, trying to kind of stand on her own and be her own hero because she is literally stranded, like, in this universe. They do establish that. It's like she is from an alternate universe. I think it's like 212. That's where her family's from, this, like, utopian universe, right, with her two mothers that raised her. But she's trapped in the 616 universe, and I guess she can't go back or either doesn't want to go back, but she's kind of trying to establish herself as, you know, a hero, kind of a solo hero, if you will, who has, like, no interest in really being a part of a team, at least initially. But she's, like, working this case, and she's contacted by a specific individual who's just like, hey, I think I might need your help with this one. Like, no one trusts me, and I was like, I'm just reaching out to everybody, so maybe you can help me, and that's Kid Loki. And Kid Loki, now this is interesting because I'm like, okay, is this the son of Loki? Or like, you know, what's the deal? And they explain in the graphic novel. So Kid Loki in this version is the reincarnated Loki. It's like Loki had died, but he's come back, but he's not like, hey, I'm adult Loki again. He's like, I'm a kid. So I'm literally trapped in this body, but but even though he's a child, he's constantly battling his own mischievous nature throughout the story. And also, but at the same time, wanting to do, like, the right thing. Because he's constantly like, I'm doing this for myself, and I'm being selfish. But then, I kind of want to help these guys. I do like them, and I don't want this world to be destroyed, because I do like it too. And so he's constantly having that eternal battle. And what's so great is, like, everyone's going back and forth, and, like, no one trusts him. And he's always, like, saying these things, like, what do you mean by that? He's like, what do you mean? Which is so funny. Like, at one point, he literally describes himself. He's like, listen, I know you guys don't trust me because what my original version did, and I'm sorry about that, but I'm like a new guy. I'm like, what's that show everyone watches? That really fun show. It's the fantasy show. And they're like, Game of Thrones? He's like, yeah, I love that. Great show, by the way. Love that show. I'm Tyrion. I'm like, you're Tyrion. But you can trust me, but I'm going to say sarcastic stuff that might rub you the wrong way. But I'm a good guy at heart. I'm your favorite character. And the thing is, though, Chad, the writing for him is so great. He's really funny. Like he's him and America Chavez are actually the two people you're introduced to first. Like in order to kind of break the ice with his meeting with America Chavez, he's like, oh, someone actually responded to me and wants to talk with me. He's like, meet me at this Korean barbecue place. And so he loves going to. It's like a running gag for him in the book. He loves going to this variety because he's like, I'm experiencing food for the first time, and I love the Earth food. You have all sorts of different types of Earth food here, and he's like going. He has all these different tabs like at diners and restaurants and. It just happened it was this Korean barbecue, and like American Chavez comes in at one point. She's like, I know who you are, but I don't trust you. He's like, that's fine, but I got this wonderful spread of Korean food. Don't you want to enjoy this with me? And she's like, yeah, I do. And so they begin eating and stuff. But again, he says something that immediately sets her off, and it creates a huge conflict. Again, he's always kind of saying the wrong. He doesn't realize he's saying the wrong thing. And that inevitably like gets him into trouble. But he's a great character in this. He's the wild card. He's the Tyrion of the book. But there's more going on with him at the same time. Like he's struggling with his nature, and he's also realizing like I don't have to be that Loki anymore. I am in a way like my own person, but he still has that Loki in the back of his mind just kind of poking and prodding me like, no, be the Loki that you always are destined to be forever and ever and ever. And he's like, I don't really know if I want that. And I like that with him. It's really cool. He's wholesome. He's super wholesome character. And so, it's like, okay, but what's the thing that brings all these characters together? Because I've kind of like, all right, kind of like they've separated them into like these duos, if you will. You have Wiccan and you have Hulkling. You have Kate Bishop and Novar. You have American Chavez and Kid Loki. So what's the thing that kind of brings them all together? And that's actually like one of my favorite things about this book, actually, is it's the threat. The threat in this book is really, really cool to me. Wiccan is, as I said before, he's searching the multiverse for another version of Hulkling's mother, who I believe her name is, they don't actually say her name that often. I think her name is Anel. I think her name is Anel Altman, and she's Princess Anel of the Skrull, I suppose. And at one point, as he's searching the multiverse with this spell that he's learned, he seemingly finds her, and she's about to be killed. She's about to be killed by something. And he pulls her out of there. He pulls her out of that specific dimension, and she's like, "Oh, thank you so much." And she seems fine, and she reunites with Hulkling and everything seems to be good. But Wiccan and Hulkling and many other people quickly discover that she's not another multiverse version, another version of Hulkling's mother from a different dimension. No, she's actually a multiversal parasitic organism that infects and feeds on people over an extended period of time. Like, if I were to describe it even more so in more detail, it's kind of like a combination of The Thing from John Carpenter's The Thing, a Stepford wife, like her speech pattern. She acts like it's like this creature is trying to figure out what is a mother supposed to act like. And so it kind of acts like a Stepford wife. It kind of has this like proper way of speaking, but then says these like really disturbing things of just this kind of like, isn't this great? I'm just going to make you some eggs and some breakfast. And yeah, I don't think you two should engage in a homosexual relationship. I think it's horrible. Okay. So take your disgusting boyfriend out of here. And so then I can raise my baby boy myself, where he can concentrate on his studies. Like, that's what she would do. And she says it all the fucking smile. It's like, Jesus. And it's like, everyone's like, whoa, what the hell's going on here? Right. But she's acting like a Stepford wife. And it's also reminiscent of that parasite thing from that one Rick and Morty episode that was manipulating everyone's perception of reality and was creating people that they thought they knew, that they just always knew throughout their entire life. I think it was like from season 1 or something. Season 1 or season 2. Really good episode. That's the one that Mr. Poopy Butthole is first featured in. It's that one. So yeah, combination of John Carpenter's The Thing, a very evil and homophobic Stepford wife, and also that weird parasitic creature from that Rick and Morty episode from the first season. It's like, that's what this thing is. And it's awesome. And it also has like this really cool ability where like one it violently like takes over people's bodies. It takes over their bodies, and then it infects them, and they start acting like that organism, and they can't really die though, so their bodies can like, they throw themselves into conflict. They kind of become like zombie-esque in a way. Like they throw themselves in the conflict, and they often like attack the heroes, but when the heroes are like, I don't know if we should hit them, they might explode, and when they hit them they do explode, but they just kind of put themselves back together. Like they're these amorphous blob like creatures. But there's a really interesting element they add where something happens to the Young Avengers, and again, I don't want to spoil it too much because it's like a really cool detail, but anytime they are near other adults, something happens to those other adults too. And they start seeing weird versions of their parents who may or may not be dead. And they have to deal with literally the ghosts of their pasts that is being controlled by this horrible parasitic organism that just is just saying the most awful things at any time. And it's like, I just want to feed on you. I just want to feed on your face and slowly over time until you wither away and die. That's all I want. Now, mother knows best. Like, that's what this thing like constantly says. I'm like, I don't even know like the name of it. I don't think they even say the name of it, at least at this point, at least not yet. I guess it's just the parasitic Mrs. Altman, I suppose. But really, really interesting idea for a Marvel villain, and one that I'm just not familiar with at all. And of course, it's borrowing from, I'm a little biased because it's borrowing from movies that I really like John Carpenter's The Thing. And the idea of the Stepford wife is really cool. And that Rick and Morty episode is pretty awesome too. So I really like that. A very original type of Marvel villain. And what's also great is too, because of its abilities, like other people, like other heroes don't even see it. It's like invisible to them. It's kind of like, I guess it's also taking a bit from It Follows, where after like it's only affecting like children and they're only able to see it, but like adults, like they can't. Like certain adults that are not connected to the Young Avengers, like Captain America and Thor and like Scarlet Witch, who are featured in the book, like they don't see this thing. Like, they have no idea why it's there, or it's like manipulating their environment and they don't see what it's doing. I think that's more what it's doing. It's affecting their perception, and so they can't help the Young Avengers, and so they're completely on their own. And so I loved it. Such a great concept. Like really, really interesting. It's like, how do you fight against this thing? And in the book, they realize like, oh, this is the only thing that we can do against this thing, at least for right now. Which again sets up the next volume, which I haven't read, but really, really cool concept. Jamie McKelvie, apologies if I'm mispronouncing the artist's names, but Jamie McKelvie, who is the artist on this, I think his artwork is really, really good. It's clean, it's beautiful, and it's often very comedic in nature. I mean, even though there's some serious scenes in this story, well, certainly, the characters are all sexy. They all look great. Like everyone, I will say, like everyone looks amazing in this book, from the men to the women. I mean, doesn't matter what age. It's like they all look fantastic in this. And the action scenes, the spreads and the paneling, all really easy to understand. It's not overwhelming in any capacity. There's actually there's a terrific sequence involving Novar, Marvel Boy, where we follow his dramatic entrance into this nightclub that's been taken over by parasitic Mrs. Altman and her thralls, if you will. And it has like this key where it's like point 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we literally see how the action sequence like happens across this like huge, almost like isometric like map or something, and we literally follow like what it looks like. And it's like, oh, it's actually like really, really cool. Almost feels like a storyboard, like from a bird's eye view. And I was like, oh wow, that and I think it only happens that one time. But I've actually was like, oh, I hope they keep doing this. This is like a kind of recurring, almost visual gag in the other volumes. But it's a really ingenious action sequence that I thought was very, very interesting. And all the artwork across the board, I think is done very well. There's nothing where I was like, everyone has their own distinct look. The costumes really pop. The colors really pop here. Mostly takes place in New York City, but we do kind of venture into some like other worlds. We visit Asgard at one point. I think it was very cool. And, we see, characters we thought were long dead in the history of Marvel come back due to the circumstances of this parasitic organism that is, affecting the members of the Young Avengers. And I thought it was, I really like this. This is really interesting. And again, I go back to this, like, yes, they do occasionally talk about some of the past events. They do mention, like, what happened to some of the other team members. But it's almost like, okay, well, look, we're going to acknowledge that for longtime readers, but now we're going to focus solely on these new characters. And I thought it was very smart on Gillen's part, where I'm going to reintroduce these characters, not like one by one, but in duos. And so you already get a sense of what the relationships are and what they're going to be and how they're going to change over time, which I really like that. It does kind of end in a bit of a cliffhanger, I have to say, so it kind of incentivizes you to read the next volume. And so I can't say it's like completely self-contained, because it's like, all right, you got to read the next story to kind of see what happens, especially with everything to do with this parasitic organism that has infected them and other people around them. It's like, I want to see how that kind of plays out. But in terms of the introduction to just this team and these characters, it's like, wow, it was very good. It surprised me, and I would highly, highly recommend it. If you want something like from Marvel that doesn't necessitate like a lot of back reading, if you will. They will mention some stuff. You're like, what are they talking about? But they kind of explain it and they move on. For the most part, this is a nice gateway, I feel like, into this team. And probably would serve as a great template if they were to ever do a adaptation of sorts. Which, again, the MCU, they've been building towards that, but with everything that's kind of topsy-turvy with them right now, and a lot of their failures at the moment, that might change their plans. But it's like, oh man, I could definitely see them do a story like this, and also just kind of a cool concept for a villain, because then you could actually bring in. This would be kind of awesome. You could then bring in like some of those big names, but they don't always have to be there. It would be actually a cool way to do the cameos, because it's literally the shape-shifting parasitic thing-like organism that's presenting itself as different people from the past. And I'm like, oh, that would actually be really interesting if they did that for a either a Marvel TV show or a movie. It'd be kind of like a better version of Secret Invasion in a way. But, even if they don't do that, as it stands, I think this is a great volume, great introduction to some of the younger heroes of Marvel, some of the younger villains, turned heroes of Marvel. And a huge thank you again to Edgy Berserker for recommending this. Thank you guys for voting for this. And I hope you really enjoyed this most recent episode of Comic Book Corner. As always, feel free to leave any suggestions on the Patreon. Message me if you have any particular graphic novels or comics or manga you'd like me to review. Obviously, next week I'll be doing, next Thursday, of course, I'll be doing another episode of Musical Musings. But, like, again, I cover a broad spectrum of comics and graphic novels, whether it be Marvel or DC or Image or Boom or indie comics. I've done it all, Chet. I'm happy to do it all. It's very, very fun. What about you guys? I'm actually curious. What's your exposure? What's your experience with the Young Avengers? Was it some of the earlier stuff from 20 or so years ago, back in 2005? Was it the more recent stuff in the 20-teens? Have you read Style Over Substance? And again, Chad, I think I would reverse that subtitle. It's very much substance over style, in my personal opinion. But they're being cute with it. Obviously, they're being cute. But yeah, feel free to let me know. What about you, chap? I'm very curious. A lot of Stranger Things vibes. Oh man, Deadpool. That's an apt comparison. Yes, there is some Stranger Things vibes in it, because the threat is definitely science fiction in nature. It's a sci-fi villain. No, from a different dimension, just like the Upside Down and stuff. So yeah, I could see that. Very, very, very good comparison. It's Marvels, that's what it is. Hulkling is the heir of the Skrull Empire. They should have used that for the Secret Invasion. That would have been cool. They did not, as far as I know. Avengers don't have boarding houses? No, they do go to Avengers Mansion at one point. I think like the writer, Kieron Gillen, he didn't want like the Avengers to have like a big role in it, because he wanted to just be kind of like focused on these young heroes. They didn't want to have to go to like, mom and dad for help. Matter of fact, they can't. It was so funny. That's a major plot point. They can't go to mom and dad for help, which is pretty interesting. But yeah, Avengers, not good parent material, I would say. Let's see here. Wait, is there another clone? Damn it, not again. That'd be funny, Peter seeing Hulkling pretending to be him. That'd be awesome, since Peter has dealt with that problem so many times in the past. James, Spider-Man is drunk today. Everyone said, am I going to see it? You're going to try that God of War deal. Valhalla DLC is pretty awesome. As I keep hearing. Initially, I wasn't, because I was kind of turned off that it was going to be just like a horde mode. But then people are saying it has like some really good story stuff. So it's like, I guess I will check it out. I'm playing through Alan Wake 2 right now, but I think I can eventually get to that at some point. I don't know exactly when. But yeah, I think at some point I have to get back to it. I have to remember the fighting style, the gameplay again. It's gonna take me a bit of time, but yeah, I think I will eventually check that out. It's free, so that helps. Let's see here. They called it Mother. Yeah, I guess they do call it Mother at one point. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, they call it Mother. Malcolm, very much recommend Batman Endgame. It's very much a roller coaster from beginning to end. A little miniseries. Ah, very cool. Thank you, Malcolm. Only see the Young Avengers animated film. Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about. That's the one where, like, Ultron killed the original Avengers and Tony Stark was the only survivor. I've seen that movie. I remember that movie. Yeah, this is, yeah, I don't think any of those Young Avengers are in this particular film. I don't think so. No. But I have seen that movie. I know you're talking about that. Malcolm, that film was terrible. The young Kane the Conqueror character is pretty cool. I remember liking that film. I saw it when I was really young, but I remember digging it, actually. Looking pretty is the biggest prerequisite to being an Avenger. That's true. Being an Avenger and an X-Man. You got to be fucking pretty. Otherwise, you're going to the West Coast Avengers or you're going to be a Morlock. That's how it works. I read first Young Avengers titles. I dropped out reading comics after the Secret Invasion event. There you go. Yep. I may go back and read some of these Young Avengers books after you read. Yeah, this at least the volume 1 I can recommend. I actually really dug it. You know, you have like a Comixology account, and you can read it right there. Yeah. Oh yeah, Avengers. Hank McCoy, he was an Avenger for a hot minute. That's true. Glee the Armies, I liked your reviews today. Has season 3 of Yu Hakusho fallen to second favorite, or you still like it better than season 2? I gotta think about that, man. To be honest, Glee, and thank you for the 100 days, by the way. That last episode, I was kind of turned off, to be honest. I still really liked the season. I thought it was very, very good. But just like, you know, the reveal, like, oh yeah, you know, Sensui, he was sick the whole time, and this was all part of the plan to bring, you know, Demon World and the Earth together. I was like, I don't know, some of those kind of like last minute additions or like little retcons, very weird to me. I have to think, unless I misinterpreted something. Also, like Yusuke's whole thing, like, no, I don't want to have you die. It was like, fuck this. I was like, fuck Sensui, but in a good way, you know. Oh, obviously in a good way. Like that was a little weird, honestly, to me. I'd think about it. But there is so much of season 3 that I think does work, and I really liked. I saw the next time Yu Hakusho, I was like, I'm surprised Sniper's alive. I thought he died, but I could have been wrong. I knew the Doctor was alive. There was that. So yeah, I had to think about it. But I have to admit, that episode I was not overly fond of. I don't know if other people feel the same way. But you understand where I'm coming from, though? Some of those complaints. All I know about the Young Avengers is the post-credit MCUs. I feel like that's probably most people's exposure to the Young Avengers. I would agree. Certainly, that's mainstream exposure. Am I familiar with Ironland? He becomes part of the Young Avengers. He's a Kane variant, correct? I'm familiar with him, but I've never read any. I've never read any comics book with him. But I think he's a Kane variant. Just had some soup and some bread. Tasty, nice. Because I didn't get to read this iteration of Young Avengers, but I did read the first 2 series. Yeah, I read a little bit of it, like I said, like probably issue 1 Free Comic Book Day. And I've seen them pop up before. They're in Civil War a lot. I knew you weren't crazy about the last episode. There was a little bit of weird twist that last episode. I thought since we coming to terms with his personalities was nice. Should have kept it. I didn't mind that. That is fine. Him coming to terms with his personality, I think, is good, but it was like some of the other stuff that I was weirded out by. Didn't make any sense to me. His ass whooping was pretty cool. He got his ass whooped. A lot better than the last. Yeah, that's what I keep hearing, that season 4 is the weakest. But we'll see. I'm definitely going to obviously review it. Yep, the Young King variant had some awesome storylines attached to him. Neato. MC Young Avengers would work better as Miss Marvel and Hawkeye season 2. So that would be cool. Yeah, I wonder if that's what we're going to do. Or it could be like one of those stingers where it kind of goes nowhere. It'd be interesting because they do establish a lot of the Young Avengers and other material. Because Patriots and the Falcon Winter Soldier, probably assume in Captain America 4. Kid Loki's obviously in Loki season 1. There's that. You know, the American Chavez is in Doctor Strange. Wiccan, Speed and Wiccan, Speed. At least I can find another version of them or whatever. And then Kate Bishop and Miss Marvel. So yeah, it'd be probably the team members and probably others. Who knows? But yeah, I don't know if they're even gonna do it. We'll see. But like material like this makes me go, like reading like a book like this makes me go, oh wow, you could do some fun stuff with these characters that I would like. I was like, yeah. So I hope they use this kind of like as a template. I think that'd be good, or take a lot of inspiration from. We'll find out. Kevin Feige has mentioned multiple times I want to do a Young Avenger. I like that. I was like, Miles more of a new X-Men than I was like, Miles more of a new X-Men than a Young Avenger. Yeah, Spider-Man, I guess Spider-Man's teamed up with the X-Men before. So I guess they can do that with, Miles Morales Spider-Man, I suppose. Well, haven't they made Ms. Marvel now? She's an X-Men. Well, they could pivot. I would not be surprised if they pivot now, because haven't they? Because now they're completely moving away from the whole Inhumans thing. And isn't Ms. Marvel now considered a mutant in the comics? Like, I feel like I've read that somewhere recently. And so she's probably going to be in the X-Men movies. That the Marvel, like the MCU ones, I'm guessing. Yeah, is that what they're saying? So yeah, there you go. So they could, in a weird way, have maybe some of these Young Avengers like join the X-Men. So they retconned her, yeah. So they might retcon it. We'll find out. She's an Inmutant. Is that an actual term? Always think about your 90s Spider-Man review where Spider-Man's racist against the... Oh, I haven't thought about that in a long time. Holy shit. Yeah. Straight up, I made him racist. I totally forgot about that review. That has to be on my YouTube channel. Oh, that's fucking funny. I got to get back to reviewing some of those cartoons. I know it's been a while, and thank you for your patience, but that would be really fucking funny. Yeah, he hates those goddamn muties. Yeah, basically retcon her powers, made her mutant. So she's gonna be a member of the X-Men then. I think that's what they're gonna do. She's actually in the X-Men right now. There you go. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. But hey, at the end of the day, Jay, like I said, I do recommend this book. I actually really liked it. I thought it was fun. I think it's a good introduction to a lot of these characters, too, if you are very unfamiliar with them, like I certainly was. But with that, chat, I'm going to call it there. Again, these streams are going to be usually shorter on Thursdays. However, next week, I will be doing an episode of Musical Musings. So think about an album or a song or a musical or a music video that I could review in the near future. I'll be back tomorrow. Tomorrow I will be doing a movie review. I'm gonna watch Past Lives on streaming. All right, let me actually see. Let me find out. It's available to rent. Not playing anywhere right now though. So I might review Past Lives. Might check that out. But along with that, I'll probably also be playing more Alan Wake. And tomorrow, chat, we're doing the Crazy for Swayze double feature. I'll be doing a watch party on Discord for Roadhouse, which I've seen, one of my favorite bad movies of all time, and also Black Dog, which I've never seen before. So that'll be super fun. So we'll be doing that. But let me go ahead and thank you guys before I leave.